everyone. So yeah, Tom asked me to talk about DevTools, and so I'm sure you're like me that you have a lot of things that you probably use on a day-to-day basis. So I was trying to narrow down my talk a little bit and figure out what I wanted to talk about, and thought that I would stick with stuff in the browser. So I saw a big show of hands earlier about people who use JavaScript. So I would imagine when I ask who codes on a regular basis for things in the browser, I'm going to get a big show of hands. Good. As do I. So I'm going to try to focus on things relative to coding for the browser today. First, I have a couple rules that I try to follow. Rule number one is automated build system. So I like, I've been learning using Node for the past couple of years, so things like Grunt and Gulp, of course other things like Rails, and now my new job we use the Play framework, all have some build system stuff. So I make sure to leverage that so that when I am changing my assets that they are running through those transpilers automatically, and hopefully at the very least also using something like a live reload system. So there's several different tools out there for doing that as well. I'm actually running this with Reveal.js. So that was, and it uses Grunt to do its build system with live reload in there. So when I was writing my slides and saving my files, it would reload the browser for me, and I don't have to go out and press any buttons, other extra buttons. So I want it to be fast and easy for me and simple. We're developers. We want to be dumb and make sure the tools are doing the stuff for us. So that's what I like. Rule number two is I like to stay in the browser as much as possible too. So that's what I'm coding for. I'm the guy that ends up with 50 tabs open at one time, and so I would rather So that's fun to find things in there too, but I'd rather not try to go find whether an application was where my other work was as well. So I want to stay in the browser. So this is there's lots of browsers, but I'm a Chrome fan, and the Chrome DevTools are kind of my go-to thing. Anyone who started developing for the web in the 90s? I'll show of hands. Okay. Believe it or not, back then, the browser didn't do a lot. It did HTML, kind of. And there wasn't many of them. So, and each time there was a new one, it did it differently. And now it does everything, or so it seems, and people try to make it do that. And so I grew up with trying to try the latest tools. When Firebug came out with Firefox, that was cool, and you could get some more detail on what was going on. If you tried to figure out what IE was doing back then, good luck. I still don't know what it does. But my go-to thing right now is Chrome DevTools. It also it's very active. It's always being updated. Let me show you one thing that was kind of just new a week ago or so. So now I'm going to sit down. Hopefully you can still hear me, but I'll show you some stuff. And we'll kind of walk through the basic areas of Chrome DevTools. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, but hopefully I'll show you some stuff that maybe you didn't know it could do, and hopefully we'll make it so you can see what's going on. So let's go in here, and hopefully that's big enough for everyone to see. And we'll start off looking at some cool stuff in there. On the Elements tab, one thing is trying to figure out where in the world, what is making my page look like that. So of course you have all the DOM that's being created for your page, and if I want to figure out what's going on there, they have this cool tool where you can zoom around and figure out where that Elements node is, and it's an H2, so I can see that. Another cool thing, not necessarily in the Elements tab, but that I found is really cool now is this device mode. I don't know how many people that Chrome could do this, but you can actually instead of having to fire up your emulator for Android or your emulator for iOS, you can at least get some basic feel for how it's going to look on a certain size device. So, of course, they have some built-in ones. You can also create your own, decide what how you want it to look, portrait, landscape, show different things like hide for the, make room for a keyboard and all that kind of stuff. So just, you know, you're not getting the actual native feel or actual native reaction to your page, but it's a pretty close way to do things. The other cool thing is also the throttling as well. If you want to see the performance of how your page loads in a certain environment on the web, and on a really bad web or a really bad mobile connection, or things like that, you can also get it to throttle for you. So all kinds of cool stuff you can do in there. Let's turn that back off. Some other neat things I saw that. So I'm big about trying to, as far as making things easier for me. When I want to test out something new, I want to be able to do it right then, right now, and not go over to necessarily have to go over to my IDE and code, save it and let it even if I have the live reload going and have it, reload and figure out where I was. So I like to do things live in the browser as much as possible. One thing I thought was cool that I didn't know that until recently Chrome DevTools can do is that you can actually drag and drop it here. So if I want to see, what does that look like if that's up there? Oh, I can drag it down there. Put it down here. So that's kind of cool. You can also figure out, one of the hard things to figure out before were things like when you have certain element or certain states on things, like, why is that doing that? That's not what I meant to do. And then you try to go figure out, all right, I'm going to inspect it. Well, no, it didn't do it anymore because I'm not hovering over it anymore. So now that you can toggle the state down here and say, no, I'll always make it hover. Okay, so what's causing that? Oh, okay, now I see. I've got this force hover styling in my CSS down here that's causing it to be bigger and red, so I can go fix that. That's not what I wanted it to do. And then you can do these other things like make it active, focus visited as well. The other things you can do in here is you can change the code live in here. So if I wanted to edit this in here, I can go ahead and pull it up and say, add some extra text in there and save it. It immediately shows it. So I can test out changing things in the HTML as well as things in the CSS too. So in the styles tab over here, I can add things directly on the element if I wanted to get it some padding, things like that. I can see all the other styles that are being applied to it and turn them on and off and figure out, well, if I what does it look like if I want to change elements in there. One of the new things I saw too is you can also start to add your own style rules in here as well as pick where you potentially want it to go. So the other piece is you can actually start to use the Chrome DevTools as your IDE and actually save things back into your files from here as well. And this allows you to pick in which one of your CSS files that you've loaded up that you want to save that rule into.
How do you load that on?
So I'm going to show you that in a minute when I get
to
the sources tab. So one of the neat things, but sounding confusing things too about Chrome DevTools is we're going to walk through these tabs, but there's actually a little bit of duplication in some of the functionality across the different tabs, and giving you a slightly different look into the different ways that your browser does what it does. So in this case, with the Elements tab, you're getting the DOM view of the page itself. So any of the live changes that have happened to your DOM as the page is loaded is reflected here, not reflecting the actual initial state of your HTML when you first loaded it. When we get over to the Sources tab, you'll be able to see the actual initial files that are actually loaded from the system. The other things you can get in here too are the event. You can see all the event listeners on the particular element that you're looking at. So if you've ever tried to figure out, where when I press in the key, where the key down events that are happening, you can drill into this and find it this way without having to start using the console and write some JavaScript to figure out where those listeners are coming from. And the other cool thing that I've recently discovered as well are the DOM breakpoints, which you can view here, which I don't have any set. But if I wanted to come in here and figure out if I had some things changing in my DOM and I didn't know why it was changing, now you can click on these things and click break on down here, and you can do different things like subtree modifications. So if anything underneath that node changed, it'll automatically break there, and you can see the JavaScript that was causing that to happen. If the attributes on it are changing on the actual DOM element, or if it's getting removed. So you just can't figure something out, and you can put a breakpoint and not have to start hunting through your JavaScript code to figure out yourself where it's happening. So I think so that was a really cool discovery of mine as well. Next we'll look at the network tab. So network tab is good for asking, well, why does my page take so long to load, or what's going on there. So in the network tab, I will refresh the page here, and we'll see it load the assets on the page. And so I'm going to actually do a full page refresh, so I won't get the cache. So you can see the little chart up here, which is neat. It can even breaks down of when the page has finished loading with these markers, so you can kind of see how much time it's taken. Down here, you get a breakdown of the actual things that were loaded, and you get the status and stuff. You also get a neat thing of telling you who initiated that particular thing. So if you see something being loaded and you're like, I don't remember adding that in there, you can drill down and see what line of code is pulling it in. And then you get also some things related to size and time, so you can actually see how heavy the asset is being loaded and how much time it took. And then there's a little bit further breakdown of the timeline. Sorry, I messed up my sorting, but to kind of get an idea of why things are being loaded and how much it's affecting your page load. So this is definitely helpful for things from the UX front, trying to decide, well, how are people viewing my app, and how fast it loads. The next tab is the sources tab. So this is the part where it's kind of acts more like your IDE, where you get the ability to see all the, you get your kind of file breakdown of the files that are being loaded. You can do your debugging in here as far as being able to set breakpoints. I'll pick a line that allows a big one. And stop and debug just like you're used to in other languages in an IDE. You can quickly find files in here with Command O on the Mac or Control O on Windows and look for a particular file instead of having to hunt through the menu bar over there. I use that every day. And then there's also some cool conditional breakpoints, or different types of breakpoints. Again, similar to the DOM breakpoints in the elements view, where you could do a conditional breakpoint. So where you right-click on there and you can click Edit Breakpoint, and you can actually have it set so you can give it some JavaScript here, and it will only stop if the expression is true. So if you're ever caught in a situation where you're in a big loop and you're like, I really only want it to stop, in this one particular case, I don't want to go through the other 1,000 times and keep hitting the breakpoint and over again, and you can tell it when to exactly break. The other neat trick I saw for this was actually being able to you can put anything in there that evaluates to JavaScript. So sometimes, even though I use a debugger and we'll use breakpoints. I also resort back to the console.log on occasion, which I'm not ashamed to say I do. But instead of having to go into your code and actually add it in there and then save the file or whatever, we can actually do console.log straight in here. So if I want to see, what does reveal, what is this reveal object here in there? What is it, without having to go in and add it into the actual code? I can save that in there. I will refresh my browser, and we'll take a look at that. Refresh the browser with the console open. I'll add this other breakpoint. Where are you going? There it is. So now I can see, there's reveal, and I can open it up and see what it is, and I didn't have to add it straight to my code. So that's kind of a neat little trick. Along the same lines, the other cool thing you can do here that they recently added is normally this resume button down here, will continue on to your next breakpoint if you have another breakpoint. They also added another little drop down here where you can actually get it to resume with a 500 millisecond pause. So if you're stuck in that situation as well, where you're, you've got several different breakpoints in there, and you just want to get around to that next iteration code where you can press the button again and make it do the function you're trying to test again. You can hit that extra play with the pause, and it'll temporarily disable all your breakpoints as it gets back around again without having you remember to click this button to disable your breakpoints and then turn it back on again. So it makes that part a little bit faster. They also have this pause on exceptions button too. So if you're just want to stop it every time you're getting an exception in your code, so you can see what error happened without having to go find and set the breakpoint explicitly on that line. That's pretty handy as well. Normally I'm sitting there tracking down stack traces and trying to figure out where that originating line came from and go put my breakpoint on, but that saves that. And then you can also see down here some of the same things you're seeing on some of these other pages, like the DOM breakpoints would show up in here if you had those. The Ajax breakpoints are pretty cool too, so you can go in and set one of these and actually break on a particular URL. So if you know your code is making a call out to a certain site, but you don't know exactly where that's happening, you can go in and enter a part of the URL here, and it will stop when that particular line happens, so you can track down who is the offending code that's going out to that site. You can also, similar as you can see the event listeners before, you can set breakpoints on those as well, so you can see every time one of these types of events are happening in your code, and track those down. And then I don't have any event listeners on this particular thing I'm looking at now, but you can see those as well. Next, timeline. So timeline is very powerful. I'm going to try to make this a little bit so we can see more stuff. In this view, I'm going to refresh the page again and let it capture the timeline view for the page load. So there's all kinds of fun stuff going on in here. By default, you can get this kind of overview of your of all the things that the timeline's capturing here. So this little part up here is your frames being loaded, as well as those same bars that tell you when the page finished loading. You've got your memory down here. You've got your network calls in here, or sorry, your memories down here. And then you start drilling down into the same kind of, so in the lower levels you get more detail into the all the different steps that your browser is going through to render that page. From the JavaScript calls to the to parsing to painting the page. You can keep getting down and down and down into the nitty-gritty of all the different things going on the page itself. You can bring up different views within this. So you can bring up the actual frame view if you want to see exactly for each frame that the browser is rendering, So you can see these lines that give you a kind of estimation, or what would be 30 frames per second, or what would be 60 frames per second, and actually click on these things and see, all right, what happened in this first frame of my page load, and see, like, I could see, oh, this parsing of the HTML is what took the longest, and took me into past the 30 frame, or past the 60 frames per second into the 30 frames per second, and then even down slower than that. So I have a neat demo of showing an example of how you might use that tool to fix something. Who's heard of the term jank? Nobody? So jank is when best describe it as when you're trying to watch something that's animated and you can tell it's having problems. So you can see where it's not quite as smooth as it should be. So I'll do this little animation here, and these circles look like they're doing okay, but they're stuttering a little bit. And so when your browser is trying to render the page, it is making assumptions about where to put things on the page as it's reading in the HTML and as it's reading in the CSS. And in certain times, when you tell it to do something, it kind of has to start over. And so it will have to repaint the whole page or part of the page again. And so there are things you can look for to help improve that. So if we pull up our little timeline view again here, and we will, as we're making our circles go, we'll take a little, press the record button, we'll record for a second, and we'll stop that and let it retrieve the events. So we can look here at these bars, and you can see they are way slower than 30 frames per second. So is there room for improvement? So you pick one of these frames back here. And one of the things, I picked one of the early frames, and so this exclamation little triangle thing down here is telling you something. It's warning me that something, that long frame times are an indication of jank. It even tells you down there at the bottom. So let's open this up and figure out, well, where is this problem? So it's in this force sync HTML call here. So we'll take a look at this. And so this is this update function. And so the offender here, I happen to know, is this offset top guy right here. So when you when you ask what's the offset top for a particular element in there, the browser has to go ahead and start placing things on the page to figure out exactly where, how much offset that would be from everything else on the page. So it has to do a render cycle there. In this particular demo, it has a suggested other path here. So let's go fix that a second. And we'll pull up my force sync call. I'm going to comment out this line and put this guy in here. Now let's refresh the page. Now let's start this again. Ooh, that's smooth, isn't it? Much better. So if we go back to the timeline view and take another little recording allocation here, we'll stop that and let it finish showing us what it captured. Oh, much better. So now everything's down here below 60, within the 60 frames per second. So we made that look a lot better. So go back. So next, profiles. So profiles tab is, I kind of mean looking for memory leaks. So there's 3 different options down here as far as things you can capture. You can look at CPU profiling, so you can see if something's really spinning up the CPU, or you can do these heap snapshots or heap allocations. So I happen to have built in a pesky memory leak on this page. So let's try and figure out where that's coming from. So I'm actually going to go back a page, and we're going to do record heap allocation. So I'm going to start my recording. I'm going to navigate back to my profiles page here. That took a while. So okay. Now let's stop that and let's figure out what's going on here. At the top, we can already see that this bar right here has told us we've captured over 50 megs of stuff, memory got allocated. So that really shouldn't happen on a simple slide page. So it takes just a second to build up the snapshot of the what was captured here. So I captured 183 megs of stuff. So that was a little much. Well, and I happened to help myself out, so what's this leaky thing here? So I can see a breakdown of all the different things that were allocated during that time I was running my recording, and I can see in this particular count that was quite a lot of objects that were created with a lot of retained size. So retained meaning it's not going to be garbage collected. So I definitely want to fix that. So in order to figure out where that's coming from, I can open one of these guys up and see down here in the retainers. So it's showing me that, leak, this leak object, leak variable in my actual HTML window page here is the offender. So now I can go back over here in my sources and try to find where this leak is. Oh, here it is right here. So I can see where when I was loading that page, this was firing and putting all these things in this array that wasn't going to go away because it's living on the page. So I can go back in there and clean that up now and get rid of that. Resources in the audits tab. This thing's a little bit more self-explanatory, but nowadays, since the browser is doing everything, it can also store stuff. And there's a bunch of different ways now to store things in the browser. So this breaks down all these different areas. So you can, if you're using local storage, if you're using cookies, all these kind of things, even having a database in the browser nowadays, you can have a way to see what's actually being stored in there without having to fire up some other tool. The audits tab, again, lots of different ways of trying to audit and see what's going on, in your web page, but it has a simple built-in thing to kind of give you some high-level suggestions of things you can fix. So and breaks down and explains what's going on. So it's always handy to look at every once in a while and make sure there's no big offenders there. So now our friend the console. Lots of cool things. I'm still in the console messing around, trying to figure out my breakpoints, what's going on, where, see what's in objects, or why things are changing the way they are. One thing I use quite a lot is just easily being able to see what my currently selected element is. So in this case, remember I still was last selecting my H2 from back on that elements slide a while ago. So that's still my current one. If I go pick another one here, I could still see what my next selected one is. So those are easy to find. Some save snippets here. Some other cool things in here you can do as far as getting information out in a way that is helpful. Of course, the standard console.log, you can see what something looks like. For when you log out part of the DOM, you get this kind of view here where you've got the actual, prints out the actual DOM element, what it looks like in the DOM. But if you really wanted to see the underlying JavaScript stuff that is part of it, there's a handy console.dir, and that gives you the expandable object view of it, so I can see all the actual attributes of the DOM element that I'm looking at. Within log itself, of course, we saw just the simple down here at the bottom. Of course, simple. Everyone's familiar with that simple way about putting things. You can style it if you want with CSS styling, so you can do that in there. You can put placeholders in there and use kind of templates for your strings in there. You can put asserts in your code if you're trying to figure out a particular case where a certain set of data isn't matching a certain condition. Of course, if it's equal, then you don't, nothing prints out, and the code will continue on. You won't know about it. In this case, if you don't pass the scenario, you can give it a message and figure out where your code where your data is not matching your assumptions. So that's helpful. There's also a neat way if you just need to put things together. You're logging out a bunch of stuff, but you don't want to. You want to associate it together. So in this case, this function's doing a whole bunch of logs, a couple log statements in there, but I want to know it's all coming from this grouped area. So it has this cool group thing in here, so it's all put together. You can collapse it and things like that. There's also a group collapsed where you can start it out collapsed if you only want to expand it when you want to see it. Table is also another cool way to see things in a table view. So if you have an array of things and you want to pull them out and put them in a table, you can do that. If you only want to see a particular attribute of the elements in there, you can just give it a list of the attributes, and because I just want to see name, you can show that. You could time your functions pretty easily without having to write your own JavaScript to time things. So I just start a time with a certain name and end it with the same name, and it'll give you the elapsed time if you're trying to figure out what's taking so long, which one things are taking so long. And also that's a neat integration with setting up a profiling too. So if I wanted to easily be able to profile a particular function, then I can use console.profile, give it a name so I can find it in my profiles view, and I'll run this. And now I can go over to my profiles and I can see my do something profile. So now I can go and see what was taking up the most time in that particular line of code without having to try and time my clicking of the record button just to get the stuff I wanted to capture. So all those are just helpful little things that I use all the time in Chrome DevTools to make my life easier and to be able to stay in the browser while I'm doing my work. Next thing I wanted to show everybody is WebPageTest. So when you're looking more into performance, we saw a lot of stuff in Chrome DevTools where you can measure performance from all kinds of different aspects. But sometimes you want to get that out of your browser and be able to test it from different places, as well as be able to. This is also very handy to be able to share this information with other people. So, anybody heard of WebPageTest? I found it from Laura Hogan, who works for Etsy, and through Etsy's Code is Craft is their engineering blog. A lot of good stuff in there. Now the UI is not so lovely in here, but we'll take a look at it. So this is one I ran against our app, and we've got some performance improvements we can definitely do in there. You can see the long trace. So this is a similar kind of view you're getting in Chrome DevTools, but now I can share this link with somebody and not have to send them a screenshot or whatever, and they can drill down into the information. You can get close up. You can click on it and get some close up information as well as some high level statistics. And as well as it's cool, it shows. In this case, it shows you'll capture some screenshots in there, and you can actually create videos and things from it and be able to share videos. At Etsy, they actually have dedicated TVs and stuff in their development areas that you can actually integrate this with an API into your build system and have it automatically run tests for you, and then they push it to a TV so anybody walking by can see how well it's performing and if there's been room for improvement or not. The other cool things it can do is you can compare your site against itself if you have different versions of it, or in this case, they have some industry, industry standard sites. That's what they call it, but it just the big guys. So in this case, I ran it against. So our main marketing website is in Squarespace. We host it there, And so I was like, I'm going to run it against LinkedIn and see how it compares. So you can actually see LinkedIn, their main site's pretty basic. They have a login page. And so it rendered, and they basically finished rendering in 2.5 seconds. Ours takes a little longer to come up. And then we actually have a big, giant movie background image that loads, so that takes a little bit longer to load. In this case, the tool actually keeps recording because it sees the movie changing in the background. So the page was actually loaded for a while, but the movie's still playing. So you can see that timeline view. So if you needed to go to your boss and be like, we're not as fast as LinkedIn, you can show them. You can also see those same overlays down here, and you've got this little toggle here, so you can see, you can fade in and out. There's Stem Premiere, there's LinkedIn, so you can definitely see LinkedIn's much faster, and ours goes down a little bit further. And then even see this cool little visual progress graph down here, which is kind of cool, so you can see that LinkedIn appears to be 100% visible down here at like 2 seconds, and then of course our movie thing kind of messes it up, but it's getting it, ours takes a little bit longer as far as how it appears to be finished. And then you can even have some other little interesting tidbits of information that you can share with people on how the performance of your app looks. And then, like I said, you can also make a movie out of it. So you can actually show it in movie format. So you can play this and load. Here it goes. So you can see how fast LinkedIn came and stopped, and then here comes ours a little bit later on. So, and then you actually see the movie start to play back there. So all kind of cool things, and this is the kind of stuff that, like I was saying, Etsy shows on their TVs, so you can actually see when things get better. The next thing is JSBin. So like I was saying before, I like to stay in the browser. I like to be able to do things fast. If I want to try to write a little bit of JavaScript or prototype some HTML, I would like to use a tool like JSBin. There's lots of other ones out there, JSFiddle, Plunker, all that kind of stuff. People use these regularly? Of course, they're good for sharing things too, so you can save one and send it to someone. I kind of go back and forth between some different ones, but I like JSBin. Just kind of my go-to one. It has, a lot of them have this now, but it's kind of, I think JSBin was one of the first ones that there's some built-in, a lot of the different libraries you are used to go to are built in, so you just come down and grab one and click it, shoves it in there. I can start writing some Bootstrap right now if I want to add in some other stuff. I want to add an Angular, I can shove that in there, start writing some Angular. Don't have to remember to go write the script tabs myself. You can write it in different formats. So if I wanted to write it in Markdown, I could do that. If I wanted to write it in Jade, I could do that. And then convert it back into HTML to see what it actually would look like rendered in HTML. And then with these other tabs, you have a similar kind of concept. So I can write straight CSS, or I can write in less. And if I wanted to see, and then I can come in here and convert it to CSS and see what it looks like in CSS. So if you use one of those tools and just want to play around and see what something does quick, you can do that too. Same thing for JavaScript. So just like we saw ES6 or ES 2015, they need to rename their tab. You can write it in that. You can write that. This has support for all these different languages as well. So just love to write examples and do quick things, and off the cuff, I come here. The other thing that's important to me is being able to test. A lot of times we're testing with Ajax. So I always like to have a tool that can support that. So a little demo here with Ajax here. In this code, you can see here a little simple Angular app. It's calling out. The way that JSBin does it is you can actually set up another bin, JSBin, that has your data in it, and make calls to it, and just put the .json annotation on the end, and you can get it back. So if you want to see actually what this other bin looks like, it's simple JSON array with 2 objects in it. So I can set that up that way. And then back over here, where'd it go? So then back over here, I can just make a call to it and get it rendered over there. So there's the AJAX call, and here it comes back. So very handy for testing out AJAX calls. And it has cool things when you sign in. You can save your stuff and get back to it, share it. One of the things that I'm ashamed to say I just figured out recently was it will do nice things. Will tell you if you have errors down here, and I'm like, okay, great, line 10. Which one's 10? All right, 1, 2, 3. I think that's enough. So actually, you double-click that thing at the top to get your line numbers. I just figured that out recently. So, tip number 1. I don't know why that's not on by default. And the other thing I can't live without is Emmet. Not from this is awesome, everything is awesome, but who's heard of Emmet? Oh, good show of hands, but good show of hands not. So Emmet has some powerful features. It's like they call themselves like the web developers toolkit or something. But probably unbeknownst to lots of people, it's built into lots of things like JSBin. Another reason why I like JSBin. So I'm going to pull up my sample here. No, not that one. Where did I go? Where'd you go? Oh, not copy, sorry. No, I have the link. I think I have a link to it. I do. Just click my buttons. So, instead of having to manually type out all those less than, greater than signs and things like that, there's a lot of shorthand things. So you just can type some basic things and hit tab, and now I have my div tab. Or if I want 5 of them, I can do *5, and I'll have 5 of them. Or if I want to do an li inside a ul, I can do the greater than sign. Or you can do classes, so dot class, and you get a div with a tab class. Or I can put it on the end of a span. You can do IDs, so you can put pound ID. You can actually put text in the middle of your things with the curly braces, so I can do that. You can do siblings with the plus. So things at the same line. You can go up a level, so I could go down into a div, put a P, and then come back up, put another div. And then you have some cool abbreviations as well, so or actions you can perform. So in this case, if I create this UL with a whole bunch of things in it, like, oh man, I really meant to wrap it with a div. And now I don't want to have to go and tab all these things over and things like that. I can simply highlight this whole thing, and on Mac it's Command-Shift-A, and I can type and say, all right, I want it to be a div with a foo class on it, and it wraps it for you. That's cool. And I'm like, oh no, that's not really what I didn't want to do that. I can also get rid of it with Command-K, and now it takes it away again. So they're not tracking down all those divs and trying to get them realigned up and things like that. It's also kind of cool. You can do things if someone sends you some code and like, oh, here, right, I need all these states in a list, and so they just give you the states. You're like, oh, I've got to go through and add all those into the list. So again, I can do that same shortcut. I'm going to copy my little feature here and put that in there. And so the star in this case is where I want the data in this list to go. So I want it to start the LIs to be 1 per state, but then I'm going to put them down inside the span. So now quickly add all down inside the span like that. You can also do some shortcuts with CSS as well. So in this case, it has these kind of algorithm for figuring out kind of what you were trying to say based on shorthand. So N10 will give me a margin of 10 pixels. If I want to do P1010, it'll give me a padding of 10 and 10 pixels. You can do colors with the hash notation. You can do that way. Some of them are a little, you kind of have to play around sometimes to figure out what it's trying to do. So OVH is actually overflow hidden. You can actually review that a couple different ways. And then if I want to display block, that's just DB. So it takes a lot of typing and makes it a lot easier. So, and then you'll find this built into a lot of different IDEs and other tools like that. So give it a try in your favorite thing and see if it's there. Or if it's not, go find a plugin and put it in there. Makes things a lot of fun. So those are the kind of resources you can probably easily find them by searching the names I've said. But that's where these things are. And now I hope you can go and take it easy, and your web development will be smoother from here on out. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.